Greetings, everyone. I'm Sister Michele, as you know, and today our guest speaker is Sister Michele. And I'm going to speak about today the characteristics of transformational leadership. Some of it is what I've learned. Some of it's new research, new literature that has come out on transformational leadership. And so I would like to speak with you about that today so that we all have the same understanding of what are the characteristics of transformational leadership. During the presentation, I'm going to ask you to think about yourself. Think about what are the many ways that you recognize yourself, or that you know that there might be an area for improvement as you grow and as you change and as you learn. So what I want to do first is to share my screen with you. And I am sharing the screen, and I now, whoops, I have it in, I'm going to end that. We're going to go to the beginning. So yeah, there we go. Yes, when these kind of things happen, you just have to change. That's how you do it. So, okay, so now we've got this concept of the characteristics of transformational leadership. You heard last week from Donna Fife. She did an excellent presentation on transformational leadership and what it requires for the future. So when we talk about the future of religious life, when we look at that, I usually use two timelines, 20 years from now and 50 years from now. I use these to talk about what is it going to be like 20 years from now and 50 years from now, and how will it be different, and what are the decisions we're making today that will influence us 20 years from now and 50 years from now. 20 years from now, oh my, what a difference that will be. So I'm kind of getting into the talk just a little early here. Let's move on. So what I'm going to cover is why transformational leadership, what are those characteristics? What are the major shifts for leaders? And you'll hear that throughout. And then what does it require from each of us? Okay, so here we go. Why transformational leadership? And there's a cluster of reasons why, and here they are. Because it's all about the needs for tomorrow, not immediate tomorrow, but we're talking those 20 and 50 years from now. Think of 20 years from now. Think how the community will have changed. It requires engagement from all of us, every single sister. It requires engagement. It requires an intercultural living essential. Intercultural living is essential for the future of religious life. We need to have an understanding of each other's cultures so that we can develop that respect for each other. It requires academic and cultural education and understanding. So it also requires, in addition to the cultural understanding, an academic piece so that you advance in your studies, and that each of the sisters has that opportunity to advance in their studies so that they can understand a variety of cultures from a variety of perspectives. And then the last one I have from the global north to the global south. So I want you to think of the equator, the equatorial countries, equatorial countries north, equatorial countries south. And we look at those and we say that in the north, we've got the mainstay, the historical countries and provinces and regions. And those would be Germany, Netherlands, England, United States. And for this presentation, I'm going to put Mexico in the global south. So then let's look at the global south. So we got Mexico, Brazil, Kenya, Nigeria, and India, north and south. There will be in 20 years a shift from the global north to the global south. And in our community, in our congregation, the question is, are we ready for that? And what do we do now that will allow us to be ready into the future? That's what the whole Life Skills for Mission is about. It's doing something now. It's educating ourselves now so that in the future, we will have many more opportunities and a different understanding. Because 20 years from now and 50 years from now, it will be different. It behooves every single one of us to engage in the education and the cultural understanding that we need for the future. So what are those characteristics? Let's go through them. There are 7. Here they are. Openness to new thinking. Think of yourself. Remember, this is all about thinking about yourself. It's not thinking about other people. Openness to new thinking. Talent for broadening minds. Commitment to active listening. Tolerance for intelligent risks. A willingness to accept responsibility. Trust in team members. And number 7, inspirational motivation. We're going to take each one of these separately now. You don't have to write them down. I'm going to deal with them each separately. First, openness to new thinking. What does that mean? It means openness to innovation. It means doing things differently, not just for the sake of doing them differently, but it means thinking differently, thinking in new ways. It means that we learn from each other's processes and we invent our own new processes. So from the University of Michigan, which is where this research comes from, they talk about Henry Ford. He was a gentleman from the United States in the 1800s and early 1900s. And he went to a meat processing center where they butchered cows and they cut up the cows and all that kind of thing. And he saw the process they used was piece by piece. Somebody did this piece, somebody did the next piece, etc. And he came up with the idea that he could make cars by having each person do something specific so that they become an expert in that. It was a brand new thinking, and it became to be the industrial line that we all know about. How do you make things? And that's one way. And it took the Ford Foundation, the Ford Car Agency, in that sense, it took it to brand new heights because he could think differently. And an openness to new thinking requires an open mindset that allows for new thinking differently and thinking differently. So in other words, it's a disposition for ourselves. It's a disposition or a predisposition that allows us to really think about what's happening and that we could think new. Second, talent for broadening minds. This suggests that a transformational leader helps to shift views. Here's how we view this one particular thing, and so we can shift views. Let's use, for an example, a sister says, I would really like that we have a Nobel, a free day, at least once a month. And during that time, we can pick up meals on our own, and we can have prayer time on our own. We can make that day a day in which we have a prayer day for ourselves or whatever. And let's just say that the person bringing it up is met with, oh no, we can't do that, etc. And you might already do that. I'm just using that as an example. The goal would be to have a mind open enough to say, well, that's a possibility. We could see how that works. And you need to understand the rationale behind the current mindset. Maybe the current mindset is it's important for us all to do the same thing at the same time. And that forms community. Another thought would be, well, you can form community in other ways, huh? So, and part of this talent for broadening minds is the ability to convince others to step out of the comfort zone and to do something new. It's very comfortable to stay. We know exactly what we're doing. Here's our box. We put things in. Stepping out of that can be uncomfortable. But it also requires empathy and the ability to inspire confidence. The ability to say, we can do this. We know we've done this in the past, so we know we can do this into the future. Let's look at number 3. Number 3, a commitment to active listening. Active listening is a little bit different than the regular listening we do. Often we listen to something and we right away filter it out, etc. But we're talking here about encouraging bold thinking and being able to listen with an open mind to ideas without judgment or finality. So, for example, in that same case, we use a sister bringing up an idea about let's have a Nobel Day. And what as soon as the sister brings it up, someone says, we tried that before and it doesn't work. That's finality. That's cutting it off. And there's judgment added. So active listening says, oh, well, let's think about that. Let's contemplate that. Maybe this could work. You leave that door open and you get feedback from the person. There's active listening techniques, and that's practically another whole 20-minute class kind of thing. But active listening techniques allows a person to speak their idea without interruption. And at the end, no one puts a judgment on it, but what you do is tend to ask questions or paraphrase and say, I hear you saying this. Is that correct? Then how can, whatever. How do you think about this? And so active listening is a different kind of listening, but learn those techniques. So, and then commitment to active listening means members need to feel seen, understood, and respected. So when somebody brings up a new idea, we understand that person is valued for their idea. And active listening, we encourage others to share without self-censoring. Now, let me tell you what self-censoring is about. Self-censoring is, I've got this idea. This is what you talk. This is called self-talk. I got this idea, but no, I'm not going to bring it up. That's self-censoring. In other words, you don't even put the idea out there because already you're making a judgment for yourself that other people will not listen or respect me or understand it. So the idea of commitment to active listening is to share without that self-censoring. Excuse me. Oh, excuse me. Tolerance for intelligent risks. What does that mean? In making decisions, there's always some risks. There's an upside, there's a downside in some of the risks. So a tolerance for intelligent risks, that it means that you evaluate that risk relative to the future of the congregation, let's say. You have to do two things. You have to recognize and realize when the risk is too great for the congregation to engage in. But you should be able to tolerate intelligent risks and to say, well, we might fail at this, but there's a greater chance that we're going to succeed at this. And so you weigh that out as a transformational leader. And you act accordingly. You go ahead and carry out that idea. Next, this is about number 5. A willingness to accept responsibility. Now, what does that mean? It means that we own the responsibility even in failure. Yeah. It sounded like a good idea at the time, but it didn't work out that way. I accept that. I know that I personally was responsible for moving us in that direction, but it doesn't. But here's what we learned in the process. So it's owning the responsibility and looking at, hey, how did we change? How did we develop? It is not shifting responsibilities. And so a transformational leader does not say, well, it was her fault. She was the one really who brought it up. And I didn't think it was going to work at the beginning anyway. So it's not doing that because that lacks integrity. But if the risk and if the idea does pan out, you really want to highlight the source of the idea as the person who really brought this forth. It might not have been you who moved it along, but it was really about the person who brought it forth. Excuse me. Got a little tickle. Number six. Number six is trust in team members. The sisters need autonomy to develop and shape new ideas. Whenever we're working on new ideas, we need the autonomy to be able to work it out. And so leadership and followership all have to say, we trust that team to do the work. They will come through with it. And you trust that something new is emerging because of it. You allow for the time to germinate. And that's actually with when you put out a new idea, and you need to allow the time for people to think about it and to say, you know, I've been thinking about this. Last night, it kept me up, as a matter of fact. And you think about it, and actually, it germinates, and people go, you know what we also could do? When you hear that line, you know what we also could do, you know, also might work, then you know it's germinating. And you trust that the Holy Spirit is there. You trust that God works in every sister, not just in the elected leaders. The elected leaders are elected for a particular amount of time, and God works through them as well. But God works through the Holy Spirit. God works through every member of community. So that's why we need that active listening. And number 7, the ability to inspire participation. This means that you would incorporate innovation into the culture. That means your country, your province, your region is known for innovation in the culture. One of the things that we need to know is we need to recognize the role of control in culture. When everybody is doing the same thing at the same time, that issue of control, which is an April topic, look for that. That issue of authority, control, and something else. Those are all part of it. We need to recognize that in any organization, yes, you need authority. You need a certain amount of structure in order to move forward. But how do you get innovation? How do you allow the Spirit to emerge out of from all the sisters? And how do you do that without stifling or putting it down? And that every sister's idea is worthwhile. In this idea of transformational leadership, you expect creativity from everyone. That means every sister is called as members to bring your creative idea. Innovation pervades the community. It models, it's another way of saying it, It's a model of universal creativity. And that is marvelous. Now, not all ideas are equal. I'm not suggesting all these ideas are equal, but each sister, keep that in mind, look at the difference. Each sister needs to be heard and respected with their ideas. It's a culture of thinking outside the box. You know, that's that image of here's the box, everybody thinks inside the box. Well, what if you stood outside that box and thought about and looked at it outside the box? So that's thinking outside the box. So the question is, what does it require of us? It requires a tremendous amount of us. It requires change. Because 20 years from now and 50 years from now, we will be me too, maybe, under incredible change. But that's our call. That's our call from Jesus. Jesus had to change too. I'm taking this course on intercultural living and religious life at Catholic Theological Union. And I'm loving this course because one of the things they talked about is that Jesus, when he met the woman at the well, and Jesus asked the woman, knowing she was a Syrophoenician, I guess, woman, she said, or Samaritan woman, the other woman was a Syrophoenician that also taught Jesus. And she said, what are you doing asking me, a woman and a Samaritan woman, what are you doing asking me for a drink? And then she begins to engage Jesus in a conversation. And Jesus listens to her and at the end says, woman, you have great faith. Now, that requires a change, a shift. It requires difference from each of us. So here we are at the summary. What did we learn? Transformational leadership transforms everyone. It's a call to change, a call to participate, a call to be engaged, a call to be innovative. It is a call to change. It repeats itself there, but it's worth it. And it means understanding our own strengths and our areas for improvement. It requires all of that from us. And it requires a deep connection with your God. And however you go about making that deep connection with your God, and it might be that you get a spiritual director to say, I want my relationship with God to go deeper than what it is. And work with a spiritual director on that. It calls us to change from the heart and to each other as sisters. I want to thank you for this time, and I'm delighted to be able to share these thoughts with you. Go over this as often as you want, listen to it again, and begin to have that germinate in you. How can we build an innovative culture? And then what are the structures, knowing every organization needs structures, what are the structures we put in place to allow that to bubble up, knowing that not every idea will go places, but that every sister will be respected and cared for their ideas that they put forth. Thank you all. Blessings. And that ends our presentation for today. I'm going to stop sharing first of all. Oh, there we go. And so thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for continuing in the program. It's really important that we all continue to grow. What are we doing now to affect changes 20 and 50 years from now? Blessings to each of you. And I will be bringing this to closure at this time. Bye now.